The truth ran to me, barefoot and frantic, and slammed into my face on a Tuesday. Gabe was late. That part was normal, he's a project manager, which is code for everyone's emergency is my emergency. My car wouldn't start that morning, so he tossed me his keys, told me to take his hatchback to Jude's parent-teacher conference after work, and kissed my forehead like always. We've been married 8 years, those small rituals make you think you know a person the way you know your own coffee order. I left the conference with Ms. Patel's gentle warnings about Jude's selective listening still rattling in my head and a half-stale cookie in my purse. A storm was stalking the edges of the sky. I popped Gabe's trunk to stash the folder and saw a white pharmacy bag tipped on its side, the receipt peeking out like a tongue. I didn't touch it at first. I told myself I'd put the bag upright and close the trunk and maybe grab takeout on the way home. But the bag was open and there were those little orange bottles, one with a pink sticker, take with food, another with the dropper cap. I'm a nurse. I know what pediatric amoxicillin looks like. We don't have a toddler. The label read, Mila R. Rocha. Father, G. Rocha. Directions, 5 milliliters twice daily. My last name is Rocha. Gabe's is Rocha. Jude's is Rocha. The bottle was filled this past Friday at a pharmacy across town I've never used. My first thought was stupidly mundane, does Gabe have a niece named Mila? Did his sister drop this in his trunk? Then I did the math. His sister, Paula, lives in Vancouver. She doesn't mail antibiotics. And the pharmacy bag also held a bright purple hair tie with a tiny silver star charm and a crumpled birthday invitation, pastel balloons, Lila turns 5. With a time and address scrawled on the back in Gabe's handwriting. Not Mila. Lila. Close enough to be a typo, far enough to feel like a slip. I sat there a minute with the trunk open, the storm rumbling closer, my heart beating in some new, unfamiliar place in my throat. I took a photo of the label. I took a photo of the invitation. My hands were steady, like they get when a patient codes and the world narrows to steps. The sky finally split, fat drops spattering the paper. I shoved the bag back upright and slammed the trunk. I wanted a reasonable explanation to leap into my mind, fully formed. A coworker asked him to pick up meds, he's helping a neighbor, he's volunteering with some charity. All of those explanations wore thin in my head like cheap wool. On the passenger seat, his center console was half open. A gas station coffee sleeve had slipped out, and beneath it was a strip of those mall photo booth pictures you get when you've got 3/4 and optimism. First frame, Gabe with a woman I didn't recognize, dark hair, bright smile, cheek to cheek, both making silly faces. Second, her kissing his temple. Third, a little girl popping up between them, all bangs and missing front tooth, a purple star clip in her hair. The fourth was empty, their faces blurred from movement like they couldn't even hold still for the camera. That was the moment the floor tilted. Not the meds. Not the invite. The way his shoulders softened in that photo, like he'd exhaled in some other life and never told me. I put everything back exactly where I found it and drove home in silence, wipers thudding time. I reheated leftover stew, read Jude a chapter of the BFG, and laughed at all the right parts. When he finally fell asleep, I sat on the edge of the tub and opened our bank app. There, tucked among the usual charges, was a monthly debit I'd never noticed, Maple Grove HOA. $45, like clockwork, every first of the month for at least the last year. We don't live in Maple Grove. At 11:42 p.m., when Gabe eased into bed smelling like rain and copier toner, I lay stiff on my side and watched the lightning paint our ceiling white. I didn't ask. Not yet. I wanted the truth, not the shape he'd contoured on the fly. I wanted to see where the cracks led. The next morning, I borrowed his car again. Not to snoop. To follow the tremor to its epicenter. The address on the birthday invitation wouldn't leave my head. I woke up before Gabe, slipped Jude's lunchbox together, and told Gabe I'd just take his car again since mine's still being jumpy. He nodded, distracted, buttering toast with one hand and checking emails with the other. My heart was doing this strange thing, half sprint, half stumble. I drove Jude to school, kissed his head like always, then instead of heading to work, I punched Maple Grove into the GPS 22 minutes away, in a newer subdivision I'd never had a reason to visit. The neighborhood looked like it had been cloned, pale stone facades, identical porches, wreaths too perfectly coordinated. Everything screamed planned community. And there it was, Maple Grove HOA was printed on the little wooden sign at the entrance, surrounded by overtrimmed bushes. I circled the cul-de-sac once, then again, pretending to be lost. My pulse was loud enough to feel in my teeth. The address from the invitation was a beige two-story with a red door and a tricycle tipped in the driveway. There was a chalk drawing of a sun half-washed by rain on the pavement. I parked down the block, phone in hand like some amateur detective, and just watched. A woman stepped out onto the porch with a mug in her hand. The same woman from the photo booth strip. Dark hair tied in a messy bun, sweatshirt sliding off one shoulder. She looked like she belonged there, like she'd stood on that porch 1,000 mornings. Then a little girl came bounding out, pajamas with unicorns, her hair clipped back with that purple star beret I'd already memorized. She squealed something I couldn't hear and hugged the woman's leg. The woman bent down, kissed the top of her head, and they went back inside. I sat there until my chest hurt. Until I realized my fingers were locked so tight around the steering wheel my knuckles had gone white. I had the proof now, the medicine bottle, the photo strip, the HOA charge, and this house with its red door. But none of it came with answers. How long? Why? Did he think he could really balance two entire families like some deranged tightrope act? Or was one of us the real family and the other some convenient lie? I drove to work eventually, late and shaky. I smiled at my patients, checked vitals, charted like normal, but inside I was a roaring question mark. That night, Gabe was easy. Too easy. He made pasta, poured me wine, asked about my day. He even massaged my shoulders while I was rinsing dishes, like a man who had nothing to hide. But later, when he went to shower, I picked up his phone from the nightstand. No password, there never had been. Messages to me, a group chat with his brothers, work emails. Clean. Too clean. Except buried in his calendar, color-coded blue instead of green, was an entry for Saturday afternoon. Lila's party. Maple Grove. He hadn't invited me. He hadn't even mentioned it. I locked the screen and lay back, staring at the ceiling. Saturday was in 3 days. And I knew exactly where I'd be. Saturday crept up on me like a storm cloud. I went through the motions, soccer practice with Jude, laundry, grocery shopping, but my nerves were a live wire. Every time Gabe smiled at me, touched my shoulder, or joked with Jude, I had to fight the urge to scream, "Who are you really?" By noon, Gabe was dressed casually but sharp, new polo, clean sneakers, hair gelled like he was meeting someone important. He told me he had a site check with a client in Maplewood. Not Maple Grove. He didn't even flinch when he lied. That was almost worse than if he'd stuttered. When he drove off, I waited 10 minutes before bundling Jude into my own car. I told him we were going on a surprise adventure. His eyes lit up, he loves that kind of thing. My heart, meanwhile, was crawling up my throat. We reached Maple Grove around 2. I parked down the street again, palms sweaty, and walked with Jude hand in hand. The closer we got to the red door house, the louder the sounds, kids shrieking, balloons squeaking, someone calling out "Happy birthday, Lila." Jude tugged my arm. "Mom, can we go in? It sounds fun." I squeezed his little fingers and said nothing. From the sidewalk, I saw it all. Streamers across the porch. A bouncy castle inflated on the lawn. Tables piled with cupcakes and soda. And in the middle of it, Gabe. My husband. Holding a pink gift bag, laughing with the dark-haired woman like he belonged there. Then the little girl, Lila, ran up to him. He bent down, scooped her into his arms, and spun her around. She threw her arms around his neck like she'd done it 1,000 times. Like it was natural. My stomach dropped so fast I thought I might be sick. Jude's voice was small beside me. "Mom, is that Daddy?" I couldn't answer. My eyes burned, but I didn't dare cry there on the street. I tugged Jude back toward the car, heart hammering, praying no one had seen us. We drove home in silence, Jude staring out the window, me gripping the wheel like it was the only solid thing left in my life. That night, Gabe came home later than usual. He smelled like frosting and barbecue. He kissed me on the cheek, ruffled Jude's hair, and sat down to watch TV like nothing had happened. I watched him from the kitchen doorway, bile rising. He had a whole other family, a daughter, a woman who looked at him like he was hers. And here he was, acting like mine. I knew I couldn't hold it in much longer. The lies were seeping into every corner of our house. Jude deserved the truth. I deserved the truth. But if I confronted him, everything would shatter. And part of me, pathetic, desperate, still wanted to believe maybe, just maybe, there was some explanation that didn't end our marriage. So I said nothing. For now. By Sunday morning, my nerves were shot. I barely slept, tossing and turning, the image of Gabe spinning little Lila around burned behind my eyes. Jude asked me at breakfast if we could have a party like hers, with balloons and a castle. My spoon clattered into the bowl. Gabe just smiled at him and said, "Of course, buddy. We'll make yours amazing." The audacity of him, sitting there planning another birthday while hiding one he'd just attended, snapped something inside me. After Jude went outside to play basketball, I cornered Gabe in the kitchen. "So," I said, pretending casual, "how was Maplewood yesterday? The site check?" He didn't blink. Didn't pause. Just shrugged and said, "Boring. Client wants changes again. Waste of a Saturday." He rinsed his mug like he wasn't spinning lies so fast he should have choked on them. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Funny. Because I happened to be near Maple Grove yesterday. And I saw you. That did it." His hand froze on the mug. Slowly, he set it down. His shoulders tensed, like a man bracing for a hit. "You followed me?" His voice was low, sharp. "I didn't need to follow you. You were right there in the open, Gabe. At a little girl's birthday party. Spinning her around like her dad." The silence after that was thick. His jaw tightened. For a second, I thought he'd deny it, laugh it off. But instead, he said quietly, "You weren't supposed to see that. Not supposed to see that. Not it's not what you think. Not you've got it wrong. Just an admission." My breath caught. "Who is she, Gabe? Who's Lila?" He rubbed his face with both hands, then leaned against the sink. "This isn't the way I wanted you to find out." The room tilted. "Find out what?" And that's when Jude burst in, sweaty and grinning, asking for water. Gabe plastered on a smile, poured him a glass, and the moment slipped away like sand through my fingers. The rest of the day, he acted normal. Helped with homework, grilled chicken, laughed at a movie with us. But every time our eyes met, there was something there. A shadow. That night, when Jude was asleep, I tried again. But Gabe shook his head. "Not tonight. Please. Tomorrow, I'll explain everything. I promise." I should have pushed harder. I should have ripped the truth out of him then and there. But part of me was terrified of what everything meant. So I nodded. And lay awake the entire night, listening to the sound of his breathing beside me, wondering how a man could have two faces, two lives, and still look so peaceful in his sleep. Morning came like a punch. I was a coil of nerves, waiting for Gabe to finally deliver on his promise. He moved slower than usual, making coffee, scrolling through his phone, like a man dragging out the last quiet moments before a storm. When Jude left for school, I shut the door, leaned against it, and said, "Now. No more delays. Tell me who she is. Tell me who they are." Gabe sat at the table, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. For a long time, he didn't speak. Then, with a shaky breath, he began. Her name is Clara. We met before I ever met you. Years ago. It was brief. Complicated. She didn't tell me she was pregnant until much later. By then, I was already with you. I felt my stomach drop. My pulse roared in my ears. So Lila. He nodded slowly. She's my daughter. My other daughter. The room spun. You've had a child this whole time? And you never told me? He rubbed his temples, eyes glassy. At first, I didn't know if she was mine. Clara kept her distance. Then, about 3 years ago, she reached out. Said Lila wanted to know her father. I couldn't say no. 3 years. Meaning while I was raising Jude, kissing scraped knees, balancing bills, and celebrating anniversaries, he was splitting his weekends, his money, his love. I gripped the edge of the counter. So what are we to you? The real family? Or the side one? He flinched. Don't say it like that. You and Jude, you're my home. Clara was never, she's not you. But Lila's innocent. She didn't choose this. She deserves a father. Tears blurred my vision. And what about Jude? Doesn't he deserve honesty? Doesn't our marriage deserve it? Gabe's voice cracked. I was afraid. I thought I could balance it, compartmentalize. I didn't want to lose you. I didn't want to break Jude's world. So I lied. And kept lying. The silence that followed was suffocating. The weight of years of secrets pressed down on me. Finally, I whispered, do you love her? The mother? His eyes lifted to mine, wide, pained. No. But I love Lila. And I can't walk away from her. She's mine as much as Jude is. I turned away, shaking, the walls of our kitchen suddenly unfamiliar. My husband, my partner, had been living a double life. And even though he'd finally spoken the truth, it didn't feel like relief. It felt like the floor beneath me had given way. And I wasn't sure if I'd ever find solid ground again. For the rest of the day, I walked around the house like a ghost. Every photo frame felt like a lie. Our wedding picture on the wall, Jude's baby shoes in the shadow box, the fridge covered in drawings, all of it existed while Gabe was hiding a daughter across town. I couldn't decide if I was more furious or heartbroken. Maybe both. That evening, I sat on the porch while Gabe tried to play board games with Jude. I listened to their laughter, the dice clattering, Jude's little triumphant cheer when he won. That sound, pure and untainted, hit me so hard I had to press a hand against my chest. Because how long before his world cracked open, too? How long before he learned his dad was living a double life? When Jude finally went to bed, I poured myself a glass of wine and faced Gabe. So what now? You think you can just keep going like this? Me here, Clara there, and you splitting yourself in two? His face was weary, but his tone was stubborn. I want to be honest from now on. No more hiding. I'll tell Jude when he's older. We can work through this. We? I cut him off. You already made choices for both of us without asking. 4 years. You don't get to decide what we do anymore. He looked like I'd slapped him. But I wasn't done. You had the chance to come clean. When she first reached out. When you saw Lila the first time. When you started paying the HOA fees. When you went to her birthdays. Every single time, you chose silence. Don't stand there and call it fear. It was selfishness. His shoulders sagged. You're right. I was a coward. But I'm begging you, don't tear this apart. For Jude. For us. The thing was, part of me still loved him. That was the cruelest twist. I could see the man who kissed me goodnight, who made pancakes shaped like dinosaurs for our son, who danced with me in the kitchen. But layered over him now was the man who'd built another life, smiled for another child's birthday candles, held another woman's hand in a photo booth. I didn't answer him that night. I couldn't. Instead, I went upstairs, crawled into bed beside Jude, and held him while he slept. My heart was splitting in two, just like our family already had. The next morning, I knew one thing for sure: silence wasn't protecting anyone anymore. But speaking the truth would burn everything down. By Monday, the house felt too small for both my anger and Gabe's silence. I couldn't keep pretending. Every time I looked at him, all I saw was the photo booth strip, the woman's smile, the little girl's missing tooth, his arms wrapped around them like it was the most natural thing in the world. I decided if Gabe wouldn't give me clarity, I'd get it myself. After work, instead of going straight home, I drove back to Maple Grove. My stomach churned the entire way, but my hands were steady on the wheel. I parked near the red door house, heart pounding, and sat there for almost 20 minutes, rehearsing what I'd say. Finally, I got out. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else as I walked up the path. The tricycle was still there, now with a helmet dangling from the handlebar. The chalk sun had been replaced by wobbly letters, Lila in pink. I rang the doorbell. The woman answered, hair tied back, no makeup, a curious smile. She looked younger up close, maybe my age, maybe less. Her eyes flicked over me like she was trying to place me. Hi. Can I help you? For a second, I almost lost my nerve. But then the words tumbled out. I'm Gabe Roche's wife. Her face drained of color. She froze, fingers tightening on the doorframe. Behind her, I heard a child's laughter and the faint hum of cartoons. I think we should talk, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. She stepped outside, pulling the door mostly shut behind her. So you know. The air between us crackled. My chest felt tight. I know enough. That my husband has a daughter here. That he's been lying to me for years. What I don't know is, what exactly do you think this is? Clara, because I knew that had to be her, crossed her arms. Her voice was calm, but there was steel in it. I never asked him to lie. I never asked him to hide you. My only concern has been Lila. She deserves a father. And he's been one. A good one. I laughed bitterly. A good father? While deceiving his son? His wife? That's your definition of good? Her jaw tightened. Look, I get it. You're angry. You should be. But I'm not your enemy here. Gabe made his choices. I just did what I had to for my daughter. Her words hit hard because they were true. She didn't owe me loyalty, he did. Still, standing there, seeing the porch where he probably drank morning coffee with her, the window where their daughter stuck unicorn stickers, I felt sick. Did you ever think about us? I asked quietly. About me? About Jude? For the first time, Clara looked pained. Every day. But tell me, would you really have wanted him to walk away from your child if Jude had been the one he didn't live with? I had no answer. My throat burned. I left without another word, stumbling back to the car. My hand shook as I gripped the wheel, but my mind was strangely clear. Clara wasn't the villain. Gabe was. He'd built this fracture, brick by brick, with every secret he kept. And if I didn't act soon, the pieces would crush all of us. By the time I pulled into our driveway, my nerves were raw. I sat there a full 10 minutes before going inside, trying to swallow the lump in my throat. But when I opened the door and saw Gabe on the couch, remote in hand like it was any other Monday, something in me snapped. You let me walk around in the dark for years, I blurted before I even set my bag down. He looked up, startled. What? I went to her house, Gabe. I spoke to Clara. His face drained of color, then flooded with panic. You what? Why would you do that? Why? I laughed, but it came out sharp and broken. Because my entire life with you has been a half-truth. Because I wanted to hear from someone who isn't an expert at lying through his teeth. Don't twist this, he shot back, standing now, eyes blazing. I didn't lie because I didn't love you. I lied because I was scared. I was trying to protect you, protect Jude. Protect? My voice cracked, louder than I meant. You've humiliated me. You've put me in a marriage where I share my husband without even knowing it. You call that protection? Jude's footsteps pounded on the stairs. He peeked into the room, clutching his stuffed dinosaur. Mom? Dad? Why are you yelling? I swallowed hard, forcing my voice soft. It's okay, honey. Go back upstairs, we'll be up soon. He lingered, uncertain, but finally obeyed. The sound of his door closing was like a judge's gavel. I turned back to Gabe, my body trembling. Do you realize how close I was to telling him everything right there? How much longer do you think you can keep this buried? His shoulders slumped. For a moment, I saw not the confident liar, not the double-faced husband, but a man trapped in his own mess. Please, he whispered. Not yet. He's too young. Let me figure this out. No, I cut in. My voice was low, shaking, but final. You don't get to figure this out anymore. You've been juggling families like circus balls, and eventually, one is going to drop. And it won't be my son who shatters because of your cowardice. The silence that followed was suffocating. He pressed his hands to his face, dragging them down like he could scrape the guilt off his skin. Finally, he said, barely audible, if you leave, I lose everything. I stared at him, my throat raw, my chest aching. No, Gabe. You lost everything the moment you decided I didn't deserve the truth. I walked upstairs, tears finally spilling, and crawled into bed beside Jude. I kissed his hair, inhaling the scent of shampoo and crayons, and realized, my marriage might already be over. But my son's stability couldn't be collateral damage in his father's double life. The morning after our fight, I woke up with a hollow chest. Gabe moved around the kitchen quietly, like a man afraid of his own shadow. We barely exchanged words. But Jude, he noticed. Kids always notice. At breakfast, he looked at me with wide eyes. Are you and Daddy mad at each other? I forced a smile, kissed the top of his head. We're just having grown-up problems, sweetheart. But we both love you very much. The truth lodged in my throat. I couldn't just rip his world apart in one sentence. But I also couldn't let him grow up in a house of secrets. So I started small, planting seeds. That afternoon, while we did homework, I told him, sometimes parents make mistakes. Sometimes really big ones. But it doesn't mean they stop loving their kids. He frowned but nodded, going back to his math. His little hands gripped the pencil tighter, though. Later, when Gabe left for work, I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook, scribbling 2 columns, stay and leave. Stay, Jude has both parents under one roof. Stability. Familiarity. Leave, honesty. Self-respect. No more lies. The lists blurred as my eyes filled. I wasn't sure which choice hurt less, or which would hurt Jude more. One thing was clear, the time for pretending was almost over. It happened on a Thursday night. Jude was curled beside me on the couch, watching cartoons, when he suddenly asked, Mom, does Daddy have another kid? The remote slipped from my hand. My heart stopped. Why do you ask that, honey? He shrugged, eyes still on the TV. I heard you yelling the other night. You said daughter. Do I have a sister? I couldn't lie anymore. My throat was raw, but I forced the words out. Yes, Jude. You do. Her name is Lila. She's younger than you. His little face scrunched in confusion. So. Daddy lives here and there? Tears blurred my vision. Daddy made mistakes. Big ones. But what you need to know is this, you are loved. More than anything. He was quiet for a long time, then whispered, "I don't want you to leave." That night, after he fell asleep in my arms, I made my decision. When Gabe came home, I was waiting at the table with packed bags by the door. His face crumpled as soon as he saw them. "I can't keep doing this," I said firmly. "I won't raise our son in a house built on lies. If you want to be in his life, it will be as a father who tells the truth. Not as a man with two faces." He begged, he cried, he promised change. But my heart was done twisting itself into knots. For the first time in weeks, I felt steady. I wasn't walking away because I didn't love him. I was walking away because I loved myself, and Jude, too much to let us live in shadows. As I closed the door behind me, Jude's small hand wrapped in mine, I knew the road ahead would be hard. Custody battles, explanations, awkward holidays. But I also knew this: lies had shattered our family. Only truth could rebuild what was left. And even if it meant starting over, at least I'd be standing on solid ground. 6 months have passed, and life feels different, but not destroyed. I rent a small apartment closer to school, with windows that look out on a park. Jude adjusted faster than I feared. Sometimes he asks about Lila, and we talk honestly. They've even met a few times, and I've seen him carefully learning to accept his sister. Gabe now comes on scheduled days. Our conversations are cold but civil. He tries to be present, and I can see that Jude still loves him. As for me, I'm learning to be myself again, not just a wife or a mother. Some nights are lonely, but others, I feel free to breathe for the first time in years. The truth broke our past. But it gave us a chance at a new future.